I no longer cling to the name that was given to me at birth. That identity belongs to a time that no longer defines me. It was laid to rest the day I stood before my family and confessed the unthinkable in their eyes. I was no longer a Muslim. I had encountered Jesus, and from that moment on my life was his. I was born in northern Nigeria into a household where Islam wasn't just a belief, it was the atmosphere we breathed. Every morning the house echoed with the rhythmic chants of prayer. Before I even learned to read a children's book, I had memorized entire surahs. I was celebrated as a prodigy. By age 8 I led grown men in prayer. My father beamed with pride. My uncles called me the chosen one. I too believed I was destined for the pulpit. But sometimes destiny makes a sharp turn. What began as casual curiosity became a burning quest for truth. Quietly, without announcing it, I started to explore. I read things I wasn't supposed to. I questioned teachings I had once accepted without hesitation. Then, one night, I had a dream. In it stood a man in radiant white, his presence overwhelming and peaceful at the same time. He didn't speak a word, but I woke up with an unshakable awareness. I had seen Jesus. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I sat across from my father and told him everything. I didn't even finish before he rose from his chair, his face flushed not with disappointment, but with fury. My mother wept, not out of sorrow, but shame. Within days, the whispers spread. A cousin I once called my brother alerted the local cleric. Then came the night that changed everything. I was taken. No questions, no warnings. They brought me to an abandoned lot on the edge of our village. They said I had dishonored the bloodline, that I had mocked Allah, that apostasy had one solution: fire. They doused me in gasoline. One of them lit a match. I could see his hand tremble, but his eyes were resolute. The flame dropped. The fire ignited. I remember the sound first. It wasn't just fire crackling, it was the sound of betrayal. Laughter mixed with sorrow. Someone I once called uncle shouted, "Allahu Akbar," as the flames engulfed my body. I remember the smell, acrid smoke, rubber, flesh. It lodged itself in my memory, in my skin. I remember crying out, not just in pain, but in disbelief. They were my people. They had raised me, held me, cheered for me, and now they were watching me burn. But then, something beyond understanding happened. In the middle of that inferno, time slowed. I wasn't alone. I felt someone with me. Not just emotionally, physically. I couldn't see him clearly, but I knew it was him, Jesus. He didn't extinguish the flames. He didn't carry me out of the fire. He stood with me in it. I lost consciousness. When I awoke days later in a clinic run by Christian missionaries, I was wrapped in white cloth, bandaged like a child again. My body was ruined, scars that would never fully fade. My hands trembled for weeks. My legs had to relearn how to walk. But my soul had been reborn. The healing process wasn't swift. I battled nightmares. I questioned if I had imagined it all. But the people around me, their kindness, their prayers, their unwavering patience, they reminded me daily of who I now belonged to. They didn't pressure me to join them. They simply loved me. Love like that was new to me. Not the kind that needed me to earn it. Not the kind that disappeared when I failed. They introduced me to the Word, gently, slowly. They let me ask questions. They let me cry. They let me be angry. And through all of it, Jesus remained. I want to say this clearly. This is not a tale of survival. It's a testimony of resurrection. Because I wasn't just saved from death. I was reborn. I still carry the scars. Some are visible. Others are buried deep. But I carry something greater. The peace of knowing I belong. That I am known. That I am loved. If you've ever wrestled with the cost of following Jesus, hear me. He is worth every scar, every tear, every piece of your old life that you leave behind. He doesn't promise ease. He promises himself. My early life was scripted like a perfect religious drama. Even my childhood toys were approved for piety. My father, a well-respected elder, was known for his commanding voice and iron convictions. My mother had softer ways, her touch gentle, her discipline restrained, but she too dreamed of greatness for me. She would often whisper, "One day my son will speak before kings in the name of Allah," and I believed it. I thrived in it. By 10, I corrected the local imam during Jumu'ah and was applauded. By 13, I spoke in youth circles, quoting hadith with precision. I was already being considered for overseas Islamic scholarship. It felt inevitable, but deep down cracks formed, small questions, harmless at first. Why Arabic for prayer, if most of us don't understand it? Why must fear be the primary motivation for devotion? Why did purity require such punishment? Why was doubt considered criminal? I didn't voice them, not at first. I just prayed harder, fasted longer, wept during late-night prayers. But all I heard in response was silence. That silence drove me mad. During my university years, I met a Christian named Dio. He was calm, polite, not pushy. One day, he mentioned Jesus, not in a debate, just in conversation. I mocked him. I called him a fool. But later that night, the name lingered. Isa, Jesus. Out of curiosity, or maybe hunger, I downloaded a Bible app, just to expose the lies I told myself. But I read this: "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest. I had never known it, only fear. Fear of saying the wrong word, fear of displeasing my father, fear of hell. But these words, they didn't threaten, they invited. I deleted the app. The guilt was immediate. The next night, I downloaded it again. I deleted it again the next morning. This went on for weeks, back and forth, desire against dread, until I had another dream. I was standing in an empty space, neither land nor sky, just light, and there in the center was a man clothed in white. His eyes were unlike anything I had seen, sad, kind, powerful. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. He walked toward me. I braced for rebuke, for judgment, but none came. He didn't speak Arabic. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten me. He simply called me by my name. Not the name my classmates knew, not the one used at the mosque or even at home. He called me by the name only my mother used, the name spoken over me when she rocked me as a baby. That name, that precious hidden name, and that's how I knew it was him. The name he used wasn't the one from school records or mosque attendance sheets. It was the name my mother whispered to me when she held me close on stormy nights, the one only those who knew my soul used. And when he said, "You belong to me," something inside me responded. I believed him. From that moment, I couldn't live the same way. Outwardly, I continued my routines, fasting during Ramadan, reciting the Quran, joining the community for Friday prayers. But inside, my spirit had shifted. I secretly downloaded the Bible again. I joined online chats with others like me, young people from across the region who had once questioned like I had, and now were walking a different road. They spoke of fear, fear of being rejected, beaten, or worse. But they also spoke of peace, a peace that made the risk worth it. The more I learned about Jesus, the more the rituals of my old faith felt like an empty shell. I no longer feared missing a prayer. Instead, I feared living a lie. The day came when I could no longer pretend. My fingers trembled as I clutched the chipped teacup in our courtyard. My father sat across from me, sharpening his knife in preparation for the evening meal, unaware that our relationship was about to change forever. I looked into his eyes and told him the truth. I believe in Jesus now. I follow him. He didn't yell. He didn't throw the cup at me. He just blinked once, then twice, and turned his face away like he couldn't even look at me anymore. "So you're one of them now," he muttered. He didn't need to say more. I had seen this reaction in others' stories. Still, I wasn't prepared for the weight of it when it happened to me. Later that night, my mother sat by my bedroom door and sobbed quietly. I wanted to open it, to hug her, to explain, but the divide between us had grown too wide. "You've broken your father's heart," she whispered. The next morning, I found my things in a sack by the gate. My older brother stood there, arms crossed. He didn't speak, just shoved me hard enough to make me stumble. My lip bled, but I didn't wipe it. I left with nothing but my phone, my ID, and a notebook I had scribbled verses in. That week, my phone erupted with messages, most of them hateful. Cousins cursed me in our group chat. Friends blocked me. One even posted my photo online, calling me a traitor of the faith. The imam at our local mosque used me as an example in his next sermon. "The devil walks among us," he warned, "and he looks familiar." But words weren't the end. One humid evening, while returning from a night shift at a roadside stall, a car screeched beside me. 3 men jumped out. I recognized one of them, a distant uncle who had smiled at me as a boy. They didn't give me time to resist. I was shoved into the back seat, my face pressed against the floor mat. No words, just the engine, the road, and the dread. They took me to an old storage site on the edge of the slums. I knew the place. We used to play soccer there. They wrapped my body in tires, soaked me in kerosene, and stood silently. One of them, perhaps the youngest, approached me. He looked uncertain, almost hesitant. "If you take it back, if you just say the words, we'll stop this," he said. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Not even to save myself. "I can't deny him," I whispered. "Not now." Then I uttered his name, Jesus, and the fire came. It wasn't slow, it was a flash, a roar of heat that devoured my senses. My body contorted with agony. My lungs begged for air that wasn't laced with smoke. I screamed, though no sound came. My skin felt like it was being peeled away. I thought it was the end. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of something or someone beyond the pain. A face? A light? I'll never be sure. But I heard the same voice again, steady, kind. "You're not alone, I'm here." And the pain, though still unbearable, became distant. My soul rested, even while my flesh burned. I blacked out. I woke to the soft hum of machines and the blinding white of hospital walls. My arms were bandaged, my legs elevated. A nurse leaned over me with tear-filled eyes and said, "You're a miracle." I didn't feel like one. My skin was scarred. My hands shook. My reflection frightened me. But inside, I knew something greater had survived. Not just my life, but my calling. The fire hadn't ended me. It had birthed me anew. This wasn't just about survival. It was a declaration, a commissioning. I was no longer who I had been. The scars on my body became symbols, not of pain, but of purpose. I started speaking to others, quietly at first. I met in secret with young men and women who whispered their doubts to me in trembling voices. "Do you really think he loves us? Even us?" And I would tell them my story. But the roots of that story go deeper. Because it didn't begin with fire or violence or exile. It began with soft questions that formed like mist in the corners of my childhood. Questions no one else dared to ask. Why must I memorize verses I do not understand? Why is Allah always angry? Why must my sisters be veiled while I roam freely? Why are Christians considered unclean when their lives seem filled with joy? I was taught to dismiss these thoughts. I tried to drown them in ritual, in memorization, in fear. But the more I suppressed them, the louder they echoed. I was born into a system that didn't allow for doubt. Islam was more than faith. It was structure, tradition, identity. My family name was tied to the mosque. My father held influence. My mother served in women's gatherings. To question anything was to shake the foundation we all stood on. Yet even as a child, I noticed contradictions. I remember being 5 years old, copying my father's movements during prayer, eyes darting from side to side, trying to keep up. I didn't understand what I was saying. At 6, I could recite entire passages flawlessly. But at 7, I was beaten for hesitating on a syllable. Still, I obeyed. I believed I had to. At 10, my mind was filled with verses, but my heart was heavy. I saw my sisters shrink under the weight of expectations. Their laughter slowly dimmed. I watched Christian neighbors be insulted behind closed doors, even as they showed kindness in public. I began to wonder. At 12, my relatives started saying, "He'll be a great scholar one day." I smiled, nodded, and forced myself to believe it. But my soul was searching. Those doubts didn't scream, they whispered. And whispers are dangerous when you're raised to believe silence is submission. These questions crept in during the quiet hours after the feast, times when I should have been at peace. But my soul refused to rest. I would lie on my prayer mat at night, staring into the stillness of the ceiling, silently wondering why peace never came, why the calm I sought in devotion always remained just out of reach. I tried to chase the doubts away with more rituals, longer fasts, deeper recitations. I repeated Surah al-Nas over and over, desperate for protection from what I feared was creeping into my heart. But nothing worked. The emptiness only deepened. Eventually, I learned to bury the questions beneath a smile, the same way someone might hide a crack in a wall with a painting. At 15, I left for university. It was miles away from my family, and my father's ever-watchful gaze. That distance gave me more than just physical space. It gave me the room to breathe and to think. I didn't rebel in the way most would expect. There were no parties, no clubs, but inside my mind began to roam freely, unchained by fear. I still followed the customs. I still prayed, still covered my head, still fasted during Ramadan, but the mask began to wear thin. My soul was peeling away from the motions. Then one evening a friend forwarded me a YouTube video titled, "What Muslims Might Not Know About the Bible." I hesitated before clicking. My finger hovered over the screen for a long time. Then I gave in. The speaker was calm. No shouting, no debates, just a quiet man who respectfully referenced both the Quran and the Bible. He wasn't trying to provoke or convert. He was simply inviting people to listen. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I downloaded a Bible app. I told myself it was just for context, to understand the differences better. But deep inside, I was aching, not for information, but for something deeper, something that soothed. I opened the Gospel of Matthew and started reading. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." I blinked, reread it. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." The words sank into my bones. Tears escaped down my cheeks, quiet and sudden. These words didn't accuse me. They invited me. They didn't yell at me. They reached for me. Then came the verse that shook something loose in my chest. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Rest. Such a simple word, yet it hit like thunder. My experience of religion had been a weight, a tightrope strung above a pit of fire. Every prayer felt like a test. Every mistake a potential condemnation. I feared missing a fast. I feared that I was never enough. I feared God more than I loved Him. But here was a voice, not of threat, but of welcome, a promise of rest, of release. I deleted the Bible app the same night. I felt sick, like I had betrayed everything I had ever known. The next night, I re-downloaded it, and this cycle repeated for weeks. I would read until guilt overwhelmed me. Then I'd uninstall it, only to find myself again and again drawn back by longing. During the day, I smiled and recited prayers with my classmates. At night, I cried into my pillow, torn between two worlds, one I knew and one I couldn't stop reaching for. I returned to the mosque more frequently, trying to smother the unrest. I memorized more surahs. But even as I mouthed the verses, my spirit drifted. I started noticing things I had once overlooked. The way women always sat behind a curtain, unseen and unheard. The way sermons painted non-Muslims as enemies. The way Allah was portrayed as remote and stern, not intimate or near. And the most unsettling part, I began to feel more at peace reading Jesus's words than I ever had reciting the Quran. In a fit of panic, I turned to the internet and posted anonymously on a forum, "Has anyone ever questioned Islam and explored Christianity?" Within hours, the responses flooded in. Most were venomous. Some said I was possessed. Others insisted I'd brought shame to my family. A few warned I'd be better off dead. But then, a private message appeared. "You're not alone. I've been there. Message me if you want to talk." It was from a woman named Layla. She lived in Morocco. Her story mirrored mine. Doubts, questions, a dream of Jesus she had never dared to speak of. Our conversation started cautiously, but in her, I found a quiet anchor. She introduced me to others, a hidden network of ex-Muslims from Iran, Sudan, Egypt, Turkey, all in hiding, all searching. None of them pushed me. They just listened, shared verses, reminded me that I wasn't broken or cursed, that I was seen. One night, I read about the woman caught in adultery, how Jesus refused to condemn her, how he knelt beside her, while everyone else raised stones. I read about how he touched the untouchable, wept at funerals, dined with outcasts. He wasn't just a prophet, he was love in human form. Still, the fear lingered of hell, of my father, of loneliness, of losing everything I had ever known. But the more I tried to force myself back into Islam, the more it felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. One night, the war inside me reached a breaking point. I whispered, "Jesus, if you're real, please, show me." No voice came, no vision, just silence. But it wasn't empty this time. It was a warm, holding silence, like sitting beside someone who truly understands you, even if they don't say a word. For the first time in my life, I felt rest. Not the kind that erases all trouble, but a rest that settles deep inside your chest and tells you you're not lost. We were taught as children to fear dreams. In Islam, dreams of prophets were considered divine, but any dream that made you question, that was from the shaitan. So when the dream came, I was afraid, but it didn't feel evil. It came after a week of spiritual wrestling. I had read all of Matthew, then Mark, Luke, and started John. And then one night, I dreamed. I was standing in a desert, an endless one. The wind howled, but there was no sound. The sand swirled, forming towers and dunes, then collapsing again. No animals, no shadows, no footsteps behind me, no movement, only a dry, heavy silence. The sky was a yellowish gray, as if day and night had merged. I looked down at where my feet should have been, but there were none. I was suspended, floating above a vast emptiness, weightless, lost in a realm that had no color, no texture. And then far off on the horizon, I saw a figure, a shadow at first. Slowly, it approached. I expected fury, thunder, fire. I braced for judgment, but it never came. He was clothed in something far beyond fabric. White, yes, but not ordinary white. It was as though light itself had taken shape and wrapped around him. I didn't flinch, my eyes didn't burn, but tears welled up before I could stop them. He walked calmly. His mouth didn't move, yet somehow I understood every word he spoke. There was no Arabic, no familiar cadence, but the meaning was crystal clear. "I am the way, the truth, and the life," he said, not out loud but straight into my being. I had read those words just days before in the Gospel of John. He leaned closer. I felt warmth, not heat. He said my name, not the public name I used in class, not the nickname my father barked when he was angry. No, this was the name only my mother used, the one she whispered when I cried at night, the one I hadn't heard in years, the name that wrapped me in safety. He stretched out his hand toward me. "Come." But I recoiled. My entire being trembled. "No," I gasped, "you can't be him. You're not Isa, you're not the prophet I was told about." He didn't try to convince me. He didn't argue or scold. Instead, his eyes, those eyes, filled with a sorrow that pierced deeper than anything I'd ever known. There was no disappointment, just compassion, love that could undo a soul. Then he spoke again, this time with a voice as audible as thunder but soft as silk. "You've been told lies about me, but I've loved you from the beginning." And he wept. I never imagined that God could cry. In that moment, something inside me shattered. I fell to my knees, or at least it felt like I did. I reached toward him, toward that presence that held both holiness and gentleness, and the moment my hand touched the edge of his robe, I awoke, gasping, soaked in sweat, shaking. My dorm room was pitch dark. No sound, not even a fan, but my heart thundered. My lungs felt like they had surfaced from deep underwater. I sat in silence, hugging my knees to my chest. My soul was still in the desert, still caught in his gaze. Had I truly seen Jesus, or was it deception? The Quran warned that Shaitan could disguise himself as light. Maybe this was a trap, maybe I'd been tricked. But it didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a rescue. The next day, I barely spoke. My breakfast sat untouched. I stared blankly at the tiled wall of my dorm room, inner voices clashing like swords. My Islamic conscience accused me of betrayal. My heart whispered something else. It was him. That night, I opened my Bible app again and searched for the verse I had heard in the dream. John 14:6. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." My fingers trembled as I touched the screen. These weren't just letters on a screen. I had heard them spoken. I had lived them in a place beyond waking. I backtracked to John 13, where Jesus knelt to wash his disciples' feet. He spoke of preparing a place, of a spirit who would guide them. Suddenly the pieces began to fit. This wasn't about converting or rejecting my past. It was about relationship. Jesus wasn't offering me a checklist. He was offering himself. But I couldn't keep this to myself. I needed to speak. I needed someone to understand. My roommate? No. She'd likely report me to campus authorities. My family? Never. Not yet. So I went back to the ex-Muslim online group and typed with trembling hands, "I had a dream about Jesus." The replies were instant. "You too? Did he say your name? Was he in white? I saw him in a desert. He touched me too." I burst into tears. I wasn't alone. I wasn't insane. Across borders and languages, others had met him. Pakistanis, Egyptians, Sudanese, Iranians, and like me, they had all been Muslims once. That night, for the first time in my life, I didn't perform ablution. I didn't face the Qibla. I didn't say anything formal. I simply lay on the ground, tears soaking the mat, and whispered, "Jesus, I think you found me." I didn't know what that meant yet. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew that I had encountered something that cracked the foundation I'd lived on for years. The structure of rules, the fear of damnation, the constant sense of never being enough. That dream had exposed all of it, and in its place, it offered not an escape, but a person, a savior. Not a judge sitting high above, but a father who knelt beside me. I hadn't just seen a prophet. I had seen the Son of God, and the most astonishing part, He knew my name. In the days that followed, I felt everything change, not like a sudden switch flipped, but like sunlight slowly pouring through a small crack in the wall. I still prayed at the mosque, still wore the hijab, still said Alhamdulillah out of habit. But inside I was becoming someone else, not a traitor, not a heretic, someone who had been seen, known, loved. The way he said my name still echoed in my mind. I tried to convince myself it was only a dream. I rehearsed old teachings, I replayed warnings about Shaitan's tricks, but none of them held weight anymore. Because this love I had experienced wasn't a bribe. It didn't come with ifs. It wasn't conditional, it simply was. It said, "You are mine," even when I didn't know who I was. I carried this secret for a week, trapped between two worlds. I led prayers for my dorm group. I memorized Quranic verses. I smiled at professors. But I was only half there. My body moved through rituals. My lips spoke Arabic. But Jesus filled my thoughts, and the more I tried to suppress him, the more present he became. Not loud, not forceful, just gently persistent. Like a melody I couldn't get out of my head, like a light shining through cracks I couldn't repair. One night, I typed again into the group chat. "I think Jesus is calling me." Messages came pouring in. "You're not imagining this. He calls gently, but powerfully. I remember that tug. Don't be afraid." Read John 3. So I did. Nicodemus, the religious leader, a man who knew the scriptures, who had power, status, certainty. But still he came to Jesus at night, in secret, scared but curious. And Jesus said to him, "No one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." And then, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son." Each word was like a spark igniting something inside me. I saw myself in Nicodemus, devout, intelligent, and completely lost, fearful, but thirsting for truth. And Jesus didn't reject him. He didn't humiliate him. He didn't try to win me with debate. He offered only love and truth. That night I stayed awake until dawn, my Bible app open and the Gospels glowing on the screen in the dim light of my dorm room. I read about the Samaritan woman at the well, shunned, broken, ashamed. Jesus spoke to her, saw her, gave her worth. Then came Zacchaeus, the corrupt tax collector who had robbed his own people. Despised and avoided, yet Jesus dined in his house and called him son of Abraham. And Peter, the disciple who denied Jesus 3 times, yet was restored and chosen to lead. Each story whispered the same truth. You are not too far gone. You are not invisible. You are not beyond grace. Tears streamed down my face, not out of fear this time, but from a deep ache, a longing I had buried beneath years of ritual and silence, a thirst I never knew I had. The next morning, while I sat staring blankly at my untouched tea, a message lit up my inbox. It was from a Nigerian man named Henry, who introduced himself simply, "I saw your comment. I've been there. I understand the fear, but I also know the freedom waiting on the other side." And so began our daily conversations. Henry gently walked alongside me as I navigated the storm inside. He never pressured, only encouraged. It was Henry who invited me into a small, discreet Bible study, an online group of ex-Muslims from across Africa and the Middle East. Every Friday night we met on Zoom. No one used real names. Cameras stayed off. We logged in using VPNs and spoke in hushed voices. There were 5 of us that first night, 1 from Sudan, 1 from Turkey, 1 from Indonesia, 1 from Tunisia, and Henry. I said nothing, I just listened. Yet even in the digital stillness, I felt more welcome than I had ever felt in my own mosque. There were no sermons, no expectations, only testimonies, scripture, and quiet prayers, in shaky Arabic and hesitant English. What struck me most wasn't eloquence or theology, it was peace. These people had found something that didn't require masks. Their joy didn't come from pretending. It came from being seen and still loved. But still, guilt clung to me like a shadow. Every time the call to prayer echoed from a nearby minaret, my body would tense, half rising out of habit. But my soul whispered, "This is no longer where you belong." One night the local imam's voice rang through the neighborhood speakers. "Anyone who leaves Islam has committed treason against Allah. There is no forgiveness. Apostasy is death." I crumbled onto my bed, fear strangling my breath. What if they found out? What if someone saw the Bible app on my phone? What if my family learned the truth? What if they killed me? My phone buzzed again. A message from Henry. "Don't be afraid. Jesus is with you, just like he promised." I stared at the words. I wanted to believe them so badly. That night, I didn't kneel on my prayer mat. I didn't whisper in Arabic. I simply lay on the floor, hands clasped against my chest, and breathed, "Jesus, are you still there?" No visions, no voices, but the same peace I had felt in the dream wrapped around me. Quiet, unshakable. At the next Bible study, I found the courage to speak. My voice cracked as I told them about the dream, about the man in white, the name he used, the way I had felt truly seen. Silence followed. But then, one by one, others began to share. He called me by name too. I saw him in a field. He came to me while I was still fasting. Their stories mirrored mine. I cried, not because I was delusional, but because I was no longer alone, because what I had experienced wasn't a hallucination. It was a pursuit, a sacred love that didn't demand I become perfect first, a love that healed me, even the parts I had hidden from myself. And the more I leaned into Jesus, the less power fear had over me. The threats still existed, but the truth he brought was stronger. He wasn't just pointing me to salvation, he was salvation. He didn't say, "Try harder." He said, "I am the resurrection and the life." I didn't yet have the courage to speak it aloud, but inside I knew I was his. The day I finally confessed my faith in Jesus wasn't filled with light or music. It was ordinary, just a quiet Sunday, but it was the day I chose truth over fear. It was agonizing, the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also sacred. I had been running from it for months, clinging to rituals that no longer reached me, whispering prayers that felt hollow, wearing a mask that grew heavier every day. But how long could I pretend? Jesus had called me by name. He came in a dream, gave me peace I couldn't explain. I had to choose, walk away or walk with him. That morning, as my father sipped his strong tea and flipped through the newspaper, I sat across from him. My heart pounded. "Baba, I need to tell you something." He didn't look up. "You failed another exam?" "No, that's not it." I took a deep breath. "I believe in Jesus." His fingers froze on the paper. The room went cold. "What did you say?" "He came to me in a dream. He's the Messiah, the Son of God." He lowered the paper slowly. For a moment he said nothing. Then, without anger, but with a cold, heavy disgust, he said, "You are not my daughter." "Baba, please, just let me explain." He stood up and pounded his fist against the table. My mother rushed in from the kitchen, alarmed. "What is going on?" She said she's become a Christian. My mother stared at me, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes filled with shock and grief. She didn't speak. "Is it true?" she finally whispered. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "You'll destroy our name," she hissed. "You will disgrace everything we've ever lived for." "I didn't want to hurt you," I pleaded. I found peace. I found the truth. But it was like my voice didn't reach them anymore. My father opened the door. "You are not welcome here. Baba, please." He pointed out into the street. "Go." I left with only my phone, my student ID, and the small wooden cross Henry had mailed me weeks earlier. I held it in my fist as the door slammed shut behind me. I stood outside, trembling, rejected, homeless, but not without hope. I spent the night at the house of a college friend, a quiet Christian who didn't understand everything I was going through but welcomed me generously, thinking the worst was over. But I was wrong. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages flooded in, some from family, others from old classmates, and a few from complete strangers. "You've betrayed your people. You deserve what's coming. Come back before it's too late. Hell is waiting. I know where you are. I'll find you." At Friday prayers, the imam mentioned me by name. He declared that I had turned away from truth to follow deception. With those words, it became official. I was now an apostate, a woman condemned, a woman some believed deserved death. Even my cousins, those who once shared their lunch with me, played games in the street with me, turned on me. So shameful. She's destroyed the family name. My father went so far as to make a public statement, disowning me. Then came the photos, old pictures of me from school, family gatherings, now being shared across social media. Yet in the storm of it all, something quietly rose within me. Peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't trapped in the image others had created for me. I wasn't the perfect daughter or the flawless Muslim girl. I was simply me. I always thought the deepest betrayal would come from enemies, from strangers. But no. The knife came from someone who once helped me learn to ride a bike. Someone who made me laugh when I was sick. Someone who used to call me Sister Layla. A week after the fallout, I got a message from James, my childhood friend, my cousin, my confidant. "Let's talk," he wrote. "No judgment. I just want to understand what's going on. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe I can help." I stared at the screen for hours. Henry, my friend from the ex-Muslim study group, warned me, "Be cautious. Just because he says it kindly doesn't mean his heart is kind." But I wanted to believe otherwise. I needed to believe someone in my family still saw me as a human being. I agreed to meet him. We sat on a bench by the dusty roadside where we once used to trade snacks and stories. He smiled. His tone was calm. "How are you holding up? Are you still praying? What made you walk away from everything?" I answered slowly, cautiously. He listened, nodded, pretended to understand, until he leaned closer and said something that froze my blood. "If you stay quiet," he said, "this will blow over. People forget." I stared at him. "You think this is about publicity?" His smile thinned. "You'll be remembered for this, Layla, for leaving, for following someone who doesn't belong to us." His voice darkened, almost inaudible now. "You know, people like you don't live long." We parted with no goodbye. I turned to walk back to my friend's apartment. I never made it. They came out of nowhere. 3 men in dark clothes. A bag was yanked over my head. I was thrown into a car, kicked, punched, spat on. Not a word was spoken. The vehicle came to a stop. I was dragged out. I smelled it before I saw it. Kerosene. The sound of tires. The clanking of chains. I knew what was coming. They tied my hands. A familiar voice leaned in close and whispered, "You brought this on yourself." My heart clenched. I knew that voice. It was James. I didn't want to believe it, but the tone, the cadence, it was him. They poured the liquid over me, and then someone lit the match. In that moment, I didn't scream. I just closed my eyes and prayed, "Jesus, if this is the end, take me. I forgive them. I trust you." Then came the fire. It was a pain no words can capture, a searing, flesh-melting agony. But as the fire consumed my body, something else filled my soul. Peace. Not peace beside me. Peace within me. He was there. Not as a distant figure, but as a presence. His voice echoed inside my spirit. "I am yours," and what should have been the end was only the beginning. I should have died, but I didn't. I woke up in a dim room smelling of medicine and smoke. Machines beeped rhythmically beside me. Bandages covered me from head to toe, leaving only my eyes exposed. Where was I? A hospital? A shelter? A prison? Then a nurse appeared. Her eyes kind, her voice soft. "You're safe now. You survived." I wanted to ask why. Why had I survived? Why had God allowed that pain, that betrayal? She told me that a Christian relief team had spotted the smoke while driving along the outskirts of the city. Thinking it was just a trash fire, they almost drove past, until they saw a charred body, barely breathing, barely alive. They took me to a hidden clinic. Everyone believed I wouldn't make it through the night, but I did. Each day blurred into the next. The pain was unbearable, the silence inside me louder than the screams I could no longer make. And then came the guilt. Why me? Why was I spared when others like me had died nameless and forgotten? Why had God let it happen at all? I cried at night, not from physical agony, but from a grief that wouldn't let go, a grief laced with anger. "You said I was yours," I whispered in the dark. "Then why did you let them do this?" No answer, just silence. For days I wrestled. James haunted my dreams. The smell of burning fuel made my stomach churn. I relived that night again and again, until one day, the nurse came in and said someone was here to see me. He stood at the doorway, hesitant, ashamed, clutching a Bible. At first I didn't recognize him, but when he stepped closer I knew. It was one of them, one of the men who had been there that night. My body stiffened, rage flared inside me. I wanted to shout, but I was too weak to move. He sank to his knees beside my bed. His hands trembled. Tears fell from his cheeks. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I was there, but I didn't understand, I didn't know." He swallowed hard. "I had a dream the night after it happened. Jesus came to me, just like you said. He said, 'You touched my servant. Now I will touch your heart.' I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep, so I gave my life to him." I blinked. I didn't know how to feel. He was supposed to be my enemy. I had every reason to hate him, but instead, I felt something else. It wasn't me. I didn't have the strength to forgive, but through me Jesus did, because he was still inside me, still alive, still faithful, even in the ashes, even in the fire. He did not abandon me. The healing was slow, painful, both in body and in soul. My skin bore the marks of fire, and my strength was gone. Some burns refused to heal completely, and when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. But it wasn't just my body that needed mending. My heart, my spirit had been shattered too. I spent weeks in silence. No TV, no music, no laughter. Just the weight of memory, the ache of questions, and a quiet cry for strength. I wasn't sure I had any left. Little by little, the missionaries who had helped rescue me began visiting. Not with pressure, not with expectations, just food, kindness, and most surprising of all, affection. They brought Bibles, yes, but more than that, they brought presents. They didn't try to convert me with arguments, they just loved me. And for someone like me, raised in a culture where love was conditional, where affection was earned, I didn't know what to do with that. Unconditional love. It was something I had never experienced before. Not from my family, not from the mosque, not even from myself. There I was, burned, broken, unwanted by the world, and yet, I was loved. Not just by those kind strangers, but by someone greater. It was the love of God, the same God who walked in Eden with Adam, who wrestled with Jacob, who wept over the tomb of Lazarus. That God had rescued me from the flames, not to spare me from pain, but to begin something new. One morning, the mission director, an elderly man with a weathered face and soft eyes, sat next to my bed. His silence was gentle, not awkward. After a while, he asked, "Layla, do you know what it means to be born again?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I truly did. He opened his Bible and flipped to 2 Corinthians 5:17. "Being born again doesn't just mean a second chance," he said. "It means a new heart, a new identity." Then he read, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, all things have become new." I closed my eyes, and in that moment I understood. The fire hadn't destroyed me. It had burned away what needed to go. The hate, the fear, the lies. What remained was something new, someone new. A week later, they brought me to a river. I couldn't walk across it on my own, so they carried me. I still couldn't believe they treated me with such care, like I mattered. I sat on the grassy bank, feeling the cool breeze and warm sun on my face. "Layla," one of them asked, "do you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior?" I whispered, "Yes, I do." They helped me into the water. It was cold, clear, honest. As I was lowered under, my mind flashed back to the fire. But this wasn't death. Not like that. This was burial. Burial of the old Layla, the one who lived in fear. When I rose from the water, I felt breath, life, hope. I didn't need approval from my father anymore. I didn't need permission from my old world to live freely. I didn't need to explain myself to the imam or earn worth through obedience. I had Jesus, and he was enough. That old chapter of my life had ended. But God was writing something new. I joined a quiet community of believers, ex-Muslims like me, survivors, wanderers. We met in basements, in apartments, sometimes even online with our faces hidden. We had all tasted rejection, betrayal, loss. But now we were finding something greater: freedom, grace, family. One night I sat in a small candlelit room with 12 others. Each face told a different story, some from Nigeria, some from Egypt, one from Sudan, another from Iraq. One had survived a terror group, another had escaped forced marriage. We didn't speak loudly, but we glowed with something fierce. Someone turned to me and asked, "Sister, what name do you go by now?" I paused. It wasn't the name my father gave me, not the one cursed from the pulpit, not the one etched into hate. I thought of the dream, the one where he called me by a name no one else knew, a name full of warmth and purpose. I took a breath and said, "My name is Beloved." Some of them wept, because they understood. In Christ I wasn't just rescued, I was renamed, reborn. I wasn't an outcast. I was a daughter of the King, chosen, protected. From that moment on, I began to share my story, quietly at first. Whispered testimonies in late-night phone calls, emails from strangers asking, "Is Jesus really worth it?" And I would answer, "Yes, he's worth everything, even the fire." These days, I speak more publicly, not without fear, but with purpose. My voice still shakes sometimes. My hands still tremble. My face carries the scars, but I speak anyway, because someone out there needs to know. Someone like me. I tell them, yes, this road may cost you. You might lose your home, your name, your family, your comfort. You may be dragged through shame and agony, but you will not walk it alone. Jesus is not a ritual. He is not a religion. He is the living one who calls you by name, even before you knew his. He knows your doubts, your secrets, your pain, and still, he loves you. I was burned alive because I left Islam, but the fire didn't destroy me. It refined me. It didn't end me. It freed me. Now I wear my scars with dignity, not to provoke, not to prove, but to testify. They are my reminders that I was once lost, and now I'm found, that I was blind, but now I see, that I was once afraid, but now I live in freedom. If Jesus could save someone like me, someone broken, scared, scarred by fire, he can save you too.